my name is Opal Singleton. I'm the president and CEO of Million Kids, an organization that combats child sexual exploitation, human trafficking, social media exploitation. This particular insider alert is about sextortion. So I will warn you that this one is a very difficult case. So if you're having a bad day, you're feeling a little down, I wouldn't approach it with this one today. But for those of you that are in the mainstream, need to and want to learn how that we can prevent these kinds of crimes and how to investigate these kinds of crimes, this is a very important insider alert. I will also warn you that I don't have a lot of photos in this one, and I apologize in advance. They just weren't photos to work with. So please follow me and kids on our social media, if you would, so that you can stay up to date. If you want to share these insider alerts, anybody can receive them for free just by simply going to millionkids.org and signing up for insider alerts. This is a tough case, I'll warn you, but it's got a lot of things to learn on it. So that's why I decided I was going to hang in there and do it. Perpetrator Marc Punzalan, 27 years old. He's sentenced to 22 years in prison. This, by the way, is not his first sentence. It will be done concurrently with the previous sentence. Because it involves sextortion and child pornography, child sexual abuse materials, CSAM, and it involved a young girl by the name of Alexis Jordan. And her parents later asked that her name be used. A lot of times they want to protect the victim, but her parents want her life to recognize that so other kids will not have this kind of thing happen to them. So 9 years after she took her own life, she was 13 years old when he, Marc Punzalan, sextorted her to a point that she just could not go forward. And it took 9 years before this case was actually brought to justice, but it did happen. So his sentence will run concurrent with a 15-year term imposed in 2015 in Maryland for similar charges, the same charge involving 4 other young girls. The first thing I want you to hear right there is pedophiles almost never have one victim. They noted in court that he will most likely be deported to the Philippines, where he's from at that time, and he will be required to be classified as a sexual predator. So he's going to serve a total of 30 years in prison, registering as a sex predator. Well, according to the U.S. Attorney Office, he pled guilty to attempted sexual exploitation of a child. In 2013, he used an internet messaging service to coerce a 13-year-old child, we now know her name was Alexis Jordan, to send him nude photographs of herself. Over the course of the next 2 days, her life became living hell. This thing accelerated, and I want you to see this case because a lot of times this goes on a little bit here, a little bit there, over weeks and weeks and months, but that did not happen in this case. He sent her hundreds of messages, literally. I mean, they were abusive messages, controlling her, demanding more photos. So in this case, her parents during the court hearing asked that her name be revealed, and her name was AJ, and it stood for Alexis Jordan. Her mother, Paula Jordan, she is one of 4 people who testified at a sentencing, said that he did nothing to stop the suicide, even though she made it clear she was about to commit suicide. In this case, the mother said that she had seen this and she had taken Alexis's iPhone and deleted her Facebook page, but Alexa created another one. That is not unusual because the victim in this case is horrified. They're terrified. Their lives are upside down. They're threatening to show those photos to everyone at school, to the family, to destroy them. So even if a family member were to take the devices or delete them or whatever, they will often do what it needs to do to try to placate this pedophile, believing that they can negotiate with them. One of the things we need to teach our children early on up front, the minute that photo goes out, you're in a blackmail prison. And you cannot placate these people. They'll want money. You can't give them enough money. They want photos. They want more disgusting photos. And pretty soon it's involving other people or the family pet. And it just becomes downright degrading. So one of the first things we have to do is teach our children that you cannot negotiate with a pedophile. Million Kids has a movie that's about to come out called Sextortion, The Hidden Pandemic. And if you'll go to sextortionfilm.com, you can see the trailer to that. And you can see that these kids try to negotiate, but they cannot. The mother said, you pushed and pushed a young girl to no return, one of the people who testified on this. Others wanted to talk about what a great smile Alexis had before all of this took place. Punzalan attempted to extort the 13-year-old by threatening her, by telling that they would tell the police, that they would tell her parents, and that they would be shown the photos that she had already sent to him. He continued to harass her and blackmail her despite her begging and pleading for him to stop. Now, I'm going to tell you something horrific, parents. A lot of times these pedophiles do that because part of their pleasure is to watch these kids literally beg for their lives. And that is the hard part of this kind of crime. He continued to threaten her, even though she told him his demands that she had contemplated suicide. The 13-year-old eventually became so emotionally distraught that she actually ended up hanging herself on the second day of his threats and the harassment. He has committed similar acts against 4 other young girls, ages 12 to 16, at the same time in Maryland, where he was living. Now, Alexa lived in Pennsylvania. He is now living in Maryland, but they never have only one victim. In fact, there probably are a bunch more victims out there that we may not know about. According to his plea agreement, he had contacted 4 minor female victims. They were ages 12 to 16 years old, and he got them to send sexually explosive videos, including cell phone apps and internet, social media, and chat messaging sites. One of the things I want you to see is pedophiles almost never use one site. They will move them around from place to place. So that's important, mom and dad, if you're checking your child's phone, to learn to check more than one app. This is where it gets even crazier, and I really want you to, this is one reason I'm doing this. Punzalan assumed the identity of at least one minor victim and used that victim's identity to convince other minor victims to send him sexually explicit photos. So these guys have multiple IP addresses, get that right, multiple IP addresses, and they have multiple identities, which he had. Every one of those victims informed him that they no longer wanted to do this, but he responded by threatening to send the images of the girl's family and friends, to publicly post those images if the victim did not send him more images depicting increasingly graphic sexual content. So these pedophiles will get you to send more and more and more. Part of it is they're probably buy, selling, and trading and putting them out on pedophile sites, but they're also getting the victim into a position where they'll never be free. And that's what we need to educate our kids first about. So in doing this, Punzalan created social media accounts in the victims' names and posted images he had received of those victims on those accounts. Following the message conversation, as recorded in court, the conversation was obtained. This is hard to listen to, folks. The victim, whatever. Instead of killing myself, I'm just going to face the consequences and tell my parents about me. He says, and I'll tell them something else too. What? Let's do it now, meaning more graphic photos. Okay. The victim, wow, now I do want to kill myself. Thanks. Do you seriously want to do this now? Whatever, I'm done. He sends a picture of himself, she sent a picture of herself with a rope around her neck. Instead of stopping, he says, do it now, AJ. Don't make me call the cops on you. AJ says, goodbye. He says, I'm seriously going to call the cops now. Whatever, bye. Okay, where you live, AJ, and when the cops call your parents, you'll be very much in trouble. She says, like I care. And then the text messaging stopped. Do you see we're moving from app to app? We're on a text message. The victim was found dead in her room that morning. She had ended up hanging herself. Parents, talk to your children and share this with your older children. It'll traumatize your younger children, but this girl's only 13, so maybe that's not too young to start that conversation. What can we talk about and what do we take away? Well, for the parents, I want you to know they use multiple apps and many online personas to seduce and control your child. So that's the first thing. Watch out, and a pedophile will start moving from one app to the other. So parents, never just check that one app. Get someone, if you don't know how, get someone to teach you how, or at least to go through the phone with you so that you can see. I often advise the larger churches to develop a geek squad with your youth group for your parents' class so that they can learn, or at least someone can intervene in a crisis to go through a phone. The pedophile used photos and videos of other victims to traumatize the victim. I want our older teenagers to understand that. Not only are they going to put them out there to school and to parents, they're going to use it to seduce other victims. So what does that tell you? That if you can report, if you can stop and say, I'm not going to do this, and you can tell somebody, you can save other victims. Pedophiles will often use photos and videos of others to make it seem like a game target, especially prepubescent kids. They'll see kids having sex games with other kids. We're making pedophiles out of our children before they go through puberty, but that is meant by the part of the pedophile to normalize that behavior and also to further terrorize the victim. The pedophile will never, never, never stop on its own. Please share that with your children. You must assume they have multiple victims and that the only way to save yourself is to report. And the power that your child has is if they're willing to report to you if somebody is trying to seduce them, or even if they've been caught up in it, they can help save other victims. So parents, do not alert the pedophile that you know what is happening and that you're going to go to the police. That way, they don't know what's happening, and you can take that phone to the police, and the police can interact on your part. Assume that by removing the device, never assume that by removing the device, the child will be safe. That happened in this case. The mother took the device. In those days, that's 8, 9, 10 years ago, we didn't know so much about sextortion. And I understand why she would do that. But that will not solve the problem. So just assume that by removing the device, they're not necessarily safe. Don't assume that they will stop talking to the pedophile. As you saw, in this case, AJ got another account or opened up on another app and started talking to him. That's because they have her traumatized. She's not thinking straight. She's terrified. And she's afraid that they're going to absolutely destroy her because he has spent the last 2 days pounding that in her. So do not assume the child's safe just because they stop talking to them, or that your child has, in fact, really stopped talking to them. Do not delete those photos, okay? It's very tempting to do that, to see your child in a horrible sexual situation that is being looked at by thousands of pedophiles. Your first thing is you're nauseated and you want to hit delete. Do not do that. However, do screenshot them so that you can go to law enforcement. And I'm asking you to be considerate. Yes, you should show that with your spouse or a school resource officer, a counselor, or law enforcement. But don't show it to other family members. Don't show it to your friends. This is your child's sexual shame at stake here. If your child is a victim of sextortion or social media, this is what we want to do. They will try to negotiate with that pedophile and go out and meet up with them every time to get the return of the photo. Talk with your child now so that your child knows 58% of kids will try to go out and get back that photo, and they end up getting raped or kidnapped. In some cases, they get murdered. If you think your child's a victim of sextortion or social media exploitation, you know your child better than anybody else. Pay attention. Pay attention to their behavior. Did their school grades start dropping? I mean, straight A students can do this, okay? Can make these mistakes. Maybe they're starting to miss school because they don't know who at school has seen those photos. They'll become real secretive, starting to put away their devices or borrowing other people's devices or shutting the door when you come by. Watch out if they start cutting. That is huge, absolutely huge, okay? Go immediately and get them counseling. They may change their eating behavior, like becoming bulimic or anorexic. They may not be able to sleep. Their entire lives are about to be destroyed. They may start running away and going away and coming back, but pay attention. If you think this is going on, especially in the middle of the night, we're having a high percentage of kids who sneak out in the middle of the night to meet up with their pedophile. Listen carefully and pay attention to that. They may need to get large sums of money quickly. They may start stealing or selling things that you have, your gold or your jewelry, or start stealing your money. Pay attention to that. They may show signs of an irrational fantasy relationship. And watch out for those signs of depression, withdrawal, anxiety, and suicide. And don't be afraid to intervene. Now, if you think this is happening, do not start screaming and yelling and wagging your finger, okay? Sit quietly with your child and tell them, I see a change in you. I see you dealing with something heavy. Is it possible that we could talk? If they're not open to that, then just say, I've been reading about these photos online. Is it possible you have one of those photos? And wait and see if they can share. If they can't share, then just say to them, if you do have, it'll be the hardest thing we ever did, but you are not alone. I'm going to go through it with you. Yes, your social media will change and we'll walk through that together. And yes, we have to go to the police because you're not the only victim. These guys have hundreds of victims. We have to deal with this. But I am going to be right here with you. And I'm still proud of you. No matter what kind of photos might be out there, we are going to get through this together. Then screenshot it. Don't show it to everybody else. Don't delete it. Don't go on and scream at that pedophile. Simply go quietly off to your law enforcement cyber crimes unit and allow them to intervene on behalf of your child. Then you get counseling. Husband, wife get counseling. The child victim get counseling. And if there are other children in the family, they must get counseling because this is not a single kind of crime. These live streaming devices, things like Tick and your PlayStation devices on your games, they all have live streaming. They can see your other children. If you think someone is a victim of sex trafficking or social media exploitation, report it at 1-888-373-7888. Now, this is not 911. If you have a hot situation where it's actually taking place, stop everything, go quietly, go to your law enforcement immediately. Don't even bother with this hotline. Go immediately, take the photos, let them intervene for you. But if you just know of a situation, someone you've maybe seen something that makes you question, this is a non-911 call. They will take some time looking into it, but they will look into it. And also you can do this anonymously. Please follow Me and Kids at meandkids.org. If you need to contact me, Opal, O-P-A-L at meandkids.org. If you have it in your heart to donate to support our work, I'll tell you, this is tough work. And if you sit through this one, you know what I'm talking about. So thank you for donating for our work. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your finances. And we'll see you next time on Insider Alert.